All right, everybody, go ahead and copy yours. If you can see here, I have one. The other version we got there is in the stores now. The link's below in the description. It's the Etsy store. Other than that, we're gonna jump into kind of what advice to give a person who don't quite understand, quote unquote, or believe in the phenomenon. What do I mean by that? It's almost an intelligence test at this point. Now, I'm going to possibly bring in some images to show. So it's 3 cases. Let's go through some of the common misconceptions, okay? Or commonly thrown out debunking answers and solutions with that. So, one, that it only takes place in the United States. That, or the rural parts of the United States, it only happens to get they only go and get the rural people. Why don't they go to the president or the other countries? It's a worldwide phenomenon. There are 3 cases that I can point you to, and I'm going to go through them really quickly and say for you to go look up and do more research on your own. We have the Colares Island in Brazil, where the Brazilian Air Force has more than 1,000 pages of documentation, like 15 hours of tape, which they never released, over 500 reports. I'm trying to hopefully getting all this right from memory. That's happened in like 1977, 1978, around that time, so look into that. There is also a case near Istanbul in Turkey. I want to say Kumburgis, I think it's Kumburgis, around 2007 for about a year as well, where a guy videotaped, and hopefully I'll put the image up as well, so clear that you could literally, you see the moon, a little dot, you zoom in on there, you can see the ship, and in the ship you can even see the occupants, which look like the Greys. Another case at the Aerial School in Zimbabwe. I'm not sure what year, I think it was in the 90s, not 100%, but very famous case. The children and the teachers then talked about and interacted with these beings and drew pictures, as well as been interviewed in present day, and the stories are very consistent. So these are things that, please go do your own research with this. With the Colares, I know Red Panda Koala put out a very good series of videos that I'll link down below as well. And for the Kumbargis Turkey case, there's another YouTube channel called like Turkey UFO Incident or so that has a lot of videos of just looking at the film and trying to analyze it, upgrade it, and get different things. So I'll put those links down below as well. The other thing is like, how could they keep such a big secret all these years? Like, what secret? You know, I was a little black boy in Flint, Michigan, who knew that the Roswell was real, or it even existed, or that Majestic 12 was a thing, and that the United States had probably been hiding this information from us and lying to us for years. Back in the 90s, as a little boy, I knew that. Let alone with everybody, we already know what they look like. The Greys, even when you see the picture that earlier I put in, you know, it's sometimes to hide something you tell people, they'll never believe it. Tell them the truth and they'll never believe it. I read that in a comic books years ago and it just stuck. It was so true. Sometimes if you want to hide and keep a secret, tell people, because then they'll believe it's not true. You know, they'll convince themselves they're so smart. What is the other thing? Oh, well, okay, so, and just real brief, I might go through, I recorded this and it didn't work out, so I'm re-record this now. But, you know, if you pick up something with 5 senses, if I taste something, touch something, smell it, you can hear it and see it, you know, I probably had that experience. And that's just inside one entity, myself, you know, and me with my 5 different senses. And you'll probably agree with like, okay, well, you probably experience, you may disagree about what my experience is about, but you probably wouldn't say, well, something didn't happen. It's just, you know, we may argue about what may. Most people who talk about and debunk this stuff doesn't really understand some of the science and the technology involved in just even our, you know, human information and how these things are recorded. For example, I'm going to give you a scenario. Say you're in the Atlantic and you're on a guided missile destroyer and you have the radar from that ship ping something out. Now radar shoots radio waves out. And if they hit something that is reflective of radio waves, which tends to be something with matter and density, and it can also be like temper inversions can have enough matter and density at that, or matter at that point to reflect. But You know, these are skilled individuals who know what they're doing, but they see something out. They don't know what it is, just something blinking out at this point. So they send, let's just say, one F-18 fighter, not even escorted two, but you know, more likely we'll send just one person out, or it's two people in a plane, so in F-18. So, but just say two or one, just say one, whatever. It has its own separate radar from the ship radar. So when it is flying up there, and then its radar starts to, the F-18, which let's just say is made by somebody like Raytheon, built into the plane, the radar on the F-18 picks up something out there, as well as with the ship. Now they can triangulate and start inferring a lot of information about the third unknown in the triangle, whatever that is. And so if they're saying, hey, I got something at this location, it's about this size, and the F-18's flying, say, I see it, and our radar's picking it up, they can switch over to their targeting pod, which, like I said, most people don't understand all of this, is a completely separate device made by, say, a separate company like Northrop or something, makes the targeting pod for F-18. The targeting pod sits outside the aircraft. It's its own device. In that device, it has two separate sensors. It has many devices in there, but in there are two sensors. One is an infrared, and another is electro-optical, which sees in our visual spectrum. And the pilot can flick between the two, but it's two systems in there. So now you're flying, you have something you pick up on the ship radar, then you can also see it on the F-18 radar. And on the F-18's targeting pod is made by a separate manufacturer, all tied into the one aircraft, but you know, now we got 1, 2, 3, and 4 sensors. In infrared is seeing something, and the visual spectrum, electro-optical, is seeing it. Then the pilots with their eyes, and there's two pilots in F-18, so it's a pilot, there's the weapons officer, or radar officer, I'm not sure which one was one in their planes, but I think it's weapons officer. So now you have human being sensors, their eyes sensing it, which of course you can say, okay, we can discount that maybe. They may be mistaken, but the targeting pod information, which is two separate sensors, both picking up when they flick back and forth, the radar in the aircraft and the radar on the ship, all 5 sensors, or 6, you know, considering both pilots, are somehow in error. See, that's where I get, like, when people say, oh, it could be like the exhaust of a plane too far away and they didn't know. These are professionals who do things that we couldn't do. Maybe with training we can do it, but we don't have those hours of training that the US pilots have in there. I'm sure they would understand the difference. They just saw it in one, like, oh, maybe it could, versus all their systems. Now, like I said, if you're gonna have failure with a similar outcome of showing similar things in all these systems at the same time, that may be as astronomical as expecting something from somewhere else or another time or whatever it may be. Another thing is, what if it's one of our adversaries, China, Russia, and the United States is keeping that secret? I'm like, and they don't have a say in the matter? We get to decide what they keep secret? It's just silly talk. So next we're gonna go into the Senate amendment for the National Defense Authorization Act. I'm gonna run through this much faster than I did the other video because I was just reading it as I was going through and blabbering, but I'm just gonna hit the high points in this one and hopefully show screenshots. But Chuck Schumer put an amendment up into next year's Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2024, which states that the United States Congress has credible evidence that the federal government has information about unidentified anomalous phenomenon that has been what they say has not been subject to the same classification rules. In other words, has not been released to Congress and to the people, has been hidden. So they have credible evidence. That's off tops. So they're setting up a task force based on kind of the language that they did for getting out the Kennedy information, which don't seem like they did a too good of a job with that. So let's not get too hype about that, I always say. But in there, they're setting up a task force. It's gonna hit the high points and just throw screenshots up. But the task force, I'm gonna do that first. The task force, I'm not gonna go through all the information, but they are asking for an executive director. And if you guys wanted to recommend your boy, you know what I would say, which is within less than a year, You will know what exists because I will force them to teach me how to fly these things, and I will fly it on to whatever stage that I was gonna tell y'all I was coming to show y'all. So you may not want to let me be the executive director, but beyond that. So task force set up that's going to have subpoena power, be able to get all these records. The government is also declaring eminent domain. So that means they're taking, if anyone has any possession, be it government or private, and we'll go through the definitions in a second, what they define as non-human intelligence or non-human technological origin. I don't have it in front of me right now, I apologize. That I'm trying to do something new and do different stuff, but we'll see. That it will be in the possession of the United States government with the full knowledge of the task force they're setting up and Congress and the president, of course, in the mix. They also got in there where they're declaring records from everywhere, even back from the Manhattan Project, Atomic Commission. Everyone, if you have any records about this subject, you got to bring forward. They identify and say with the term unidentified anomalous phenomenon, incorporates everything in the past from UFO, unidentified submerged objects, extraterrestrial, anything. We want to have one term that encompasses any and everything at once. They define non-human intelligence. I'm going to show screenshots of a lot of stuff as I say this. Define non-human intelligence, showing, it's pretty straightforward. You'll see the words there. Something that's probably created by, we're not sure what, unknown, or we're not exactly sure, non-human technological something. They go through a lot of definitions. I'm going to show them, read about it, but it's getting real. We want to get this done. We're not playing around. I think it's going to be, they said the group will exist at least till 2030 unless Congress decides to go further, and they're giving them like $20 million a year for a budget. So next week, or this week coming up, we're going to have the UFO House Oversight Committee with the 3 witnesses, and it's getting real. With that, let's go. Love it. I love you. You love you. God loves us, and that's all that